The idea of closing entrances in order to group riders together.
The more you have crowds of people, the safer it's likely to be.
Oh, today we've got crowds. Alan Miner, out in Brooklyn, says now the closed entrances are creating problems.
This is a major cause of subway delays because you're forcing people to enter at basically one or two access points.
Which means people bunch up when they get on the train, and it's no picnic getting off either. Alan once timed how long it took people to leave a station when there was only one exit left open.
It took almost 2 minutes for everyone to get off the platform, which is, to me, like, insane.
The MTA knows this is a problem. Spokesman Adam Lisberg.
This is something we're very actively looking at. We're very well aware of it. We want to make this using the system as convenient as possible.
But he says it will take time and money to figure out which of the 119 closed exits it's worth reopening. Until then, do your fellow strap hanger a favor and redistribute yourself along the platform when getting on, and be patient on your way off. For WNYC, I'm Kate Hines.
To see if your station has any closed exits, visit our data news map at wnyc.org.
In Myanmar, also known as Burma, initial vote counts show the pro-democracy opposition is headed for a decisive victory. The party has done well across most of the country and in its largest city, Yangon. The results are coming in 2 days after what's been called the freest elections there in a generation. But for reasons that are clear, the votes are taking a long time to count. NPR's Anthony Kuhn reports from Yangon.
For 2 nights in a row, supporters of the opposition National League for Democracy, or NLD, have partied in the streets outside NLD headquarters to celebrate their apparent victory. One of the first NLD winners to be announced is feminist and pro-democracy activist Zin Ma Aung. She says opposition leader Aung San Suu Kyi is trying to keep the celebrations from getting out of hand. She uses the Burmese honorific daw before Suu Kyi's name.
Aung San Suu Kyi and the leaders are trying to, manage and control the overwhelming victory and the emotion of our people. We need to enjoy the victory cautiously.
Cautiously, she says, because if she wins, Suu Kyi will need to form a ruling coalition, and she can't afford to alienate the election's losers. Despite some political reforms over the past 5 years, 25% of the seats in Myanmar's parliament are still reserved for unelected military lawmakers. And even if the opposition wins, that'll make it tough for them to push for further reforms. As for Zin Ma Aung, she served 11 years in jail because of her activism with the NLD. She believes that activism paved the way for her electoral win.
I think it's a fruitful result of our previous activities and our previous commitments.
Maybe it means you didn't go to jail for nothing.
Yes.
But election results have been trickling in so slowly that it has the NLD worried. It's made numerous allegations of vote rigging to the authorities. One reason the election may be hard to steal, though, is the presence of more than 10,000 domestic and foreign observers. Mary Robinson is the former president of Ireland and an observer with the Atlanta-based Carter Center. She says the election puts Myanmar solidly on the path to democracy. And the enthusiasm of Burmese voters, she adds, is a refreshing contrast to the apathy of some voters in more mature democracies.
When you see how much it means and what a signal it is of a people's courage and determination to change, it's very moving.
It's even more moving for the Burmese people themselves, who have fought for nearly 2 centuries to be free, first of British and Japanese colonial rule, and then a brutal Burmese military dictatorship. Jason Carter is incoming chairman of the Board of Trustees of the Carter Center and the grandson of President Jimmy Carter. He says he learned about the Burmese people's struggles straight from a voter on Election Day.
One of the first people we talked to in the morning had been waiting in line since 3 a.m. And I said, wow, that sounds like a long time. And he looked at me and said, no, I've been waiting so much longer.
Anthony Kuhn, NPR News, Yangon.
is WNYC and WNYC.org. Coming up next on Marketplace, General Electric may soon move its headquarters out of Fairfield, Connecticut.
People put down roots. Companies don't. Not any longer.
We'll look at the economic impact of that move up next on Marketplace right here on WNYC. Well, tonight it will be rainy, rain heavy at times, especially as we approach midnight. Highs in the, or I should say lows in the upper 40s. And tomorrow, Wednesday morning, more drizzle, but clouds and then sun with a high of 61 degrees. And Thursday, more rain with a high of 60. Currently, it is 54 degrees at 6:30.
WNYC support comes from Geico, offering auto insurance coverage for cars, trucks, or SUVs and providing 24/7 customer service. More information on auto insurance at geico.com or 1-800-947-AUTO. Marketplace is supported by the United States Postal Service, offering Holiday Forever stamps at local retailers. Supermarkets, drugstores, wholesale clubs, and office supply stores sell Holiday Forever stamps. It doesn't seem possible, but sometimes when you try to escape war in Syria, you end up someplace worse. From American Public Media, this is Marketplace. Marketplace is supported by Constant Contact, with email marketing tools and support to help small businesses and nonprofits become marketers. Learn more at ConstantContact.com. And by Ring Central, the cloud communication system that integrates with CRM, sales and support applications like Salesforce, Zendesk, Box, and now Google for Work. More at RingCentral.com. And by Xero.com, an accounting solution designed for small business. With Xero, you can manage business financials on the go. Xero.com. Xero, beautiful accounting software. In San Francisco, I'm Molly Wood, filling in for Kai Rizdal. It's Tuesday, November 10th, and we're so glad you could join us. Let's start today with the ongoing conversation about just what exactly it means to work in this country. By some estimates, more than 50 million Americans are now technically self-employed, most of them in what's being called the gig economy. So a coalition of gig economy executives, labor leaders, and think tankers published a letter today calling for a conversation about how to make sure on-demand companies can succeed without jeopardizing the economic stability of all those workers. Marketplace's Annie Baxter has more.
The letter was signed by leaders of several key companies in the gig economy, like Etsy, Lyft, and Handy.
We're giving cleaners, handymen, plumbers the ability to work in an incredibly flexible way.
Oisin Hanrahan is Handy's co-founder and CEO. He says over 10,000 people earn money through Handy. 80% of them are putting in fewer than 20 hours a week, taking gigs when they want.
What we want to do is figure out how we can continue to preserve that flexibility while allowing these folks to gain access to additional benefits.
Benefits like sick time, unemployment insurance, Social Security, the stuff you get with a real job. On-demand companies depend on worker flexibility for their business models, but workers want some stability. Handy and other companies have been hit with lawsuits from workers who say they put in so many hours, they're practically employees and should get benefits.
And it seems that the best way to solve these problems is really to find solutions and not fight them out in court.
That's coalition member Andy Stern. He's the president emeritus of the Service Employees International Union. He says some high-level contingent workers earn decent livings, but more and more struggle. He says a new model for handling those workers is needed.
My hope is, as we saw with building trades unions who work for many employers over short periods of time, that we can find a way to allow people to get benefits, build wealth, without slowing down innovation.
Stern says the coalition will continue to meet to try to make those ideas more concrete. I'm Annie Baxter for Marketplace.
In air travel, a proposal for an airline parking spot swap. United wants more spaces at Newark, Delta wants more room at JFK, so they're, doing a little trade. But the U.S. Department of Justice says that little trade is a big deal, the kind that could lead to a United monopoly in Newark, which could lead to higher prices for you and me. Marketplace's Andy Euler reports.
The Department of Justice thinks it's pretty simple. Bill Baer is with the department's antitrust division. Our concern is that consumers at Newark, on average, pay a whole lot more than consumers flying out of other New York area airports.
That's because United already maintains almost 3/4 of the takeoff and landing slots at Newark. The deal with Delta would give it an additional 24.
I think to say that it's a monopoly is maybe overstating it a little bit.
That's Jonathan Williams. He teaches economics at the University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill. He says consumers do have other choices. LaGuardia is about 15 miles away from the Newark airport, JFK 30 miles. So why does it cost more to fly out of Newark? Michael Boyd is president of an aviation consulting firm.
The U.S. is now in a hub and spoke system. If you're in a big hub airport like Newark, you can fly United to almost anywhere. But if you're in a place like Charleston, South Carolina, mostly you're going to be connecting.
In other words, in a hub city, you're paying for convenience. The tough thing is putting a dollar value on it. Jan Bruckner is an economics professor at UC Irvine.
Many people argue that the hub premium is partly a function of the fact that the passengers are getting a better product, meaning living in a hub city with fabulous connectivity to everywhere.
There's no doubt that the strong presence of one airline at a hub improves efficiency. What's still to be seen is whether the savings from that efficiency get passed on to the consumer. I'm Andy Euler for Marketplace.
On Wall Street today, signs of life. They're faint, but they're there. We'll have more when we do the numbers. Now to Syria, where the conflict there, that's well into its 5th year, has created one of the worst humanitarian crises since World War II. You know about the migrant crisis it's created. Nearly 4 million people have fled Syria, about a quarter of those to Jordan. But once they get there, things are often no better. In fact, seeking food and treatment for sick children, some people are actually returning to Syria. From Jordan, the BBC's Andrew Hoskin reports.
Outside the Zatari refugee camp in northern Jordan, there are hundreds of refugees of all ages. Many are wandering around with pieces of paper. That's because they're getting the necessary documents to do what many may have thought unthinkable just a few months ago, to return home to Syria. Buses outside Zatari, the biggest refugee camp in the Middle East, wait to take refugees back to their war-ravaged country. Queuing up in his wheelchair for the right paperwork to go back to Deraa in southern Syria, just the other side of the border, was Mahmoud Hassan Elian, 63 years old and bedridden. He's returning home with his wife, 6 daughters, 1 son, and 5 grandchildren.
I have been here for a year and a half before we could take leave and go and see our families and come back here, but it's no longer possible. I just want to go back and see my family. I just want to go and meet my family.
Is there any financial reason why you have to leave?
Of course there are financial problems. The money on the debt card that World Food Program gives us is not sufficient. If you have boys, if you have sons, they could work, so you could stay, but I don't have anybody and I can't work because I'm bedridden, so I have to go back there.
Although food aid has been restored to refugees in response to the growing crisis, many Syrian refugees in Jordan are getting increasingly desperate. Many are in debt to landlords who can't get the basics to help get their ruined lives back to some degree of normalcy. I spoke to one mother called Fatima, who lives near the northern Jordanian city of Irbid. She escaped to Jordan more than 2 years ago with severe head injuries from the besieged city of Homs. She has 6 children.
It's very difficult, the situation here. I want to go back. Here we have no cash assistance. The voucher, it's limited. There's really not a lot of security. So I do think about going back to Syria. We're dead anyway, so might as well go back.
Some say they may return to Syria only to travel on to Turkey and Europe. Over coffee in his little mobile home at Zatari camp, I talked with Yazar Mazari, a father of 5, who says he's being forced to contemplate something possibly suicidal, a deadly trek through Syria and territory held by a so-called Islamic State. Mr. Mazari's baby daughter has a life-threatening blood disorder. The same disease has already claimed the life of another daughter, and he's determined history won't repeat itself. He says if he doesn't get resettled to Germany, where he already has family and where the necessary treatment is available, he'll try to get there himself via Syria and Turkey. So you're prepared to take the risk to go through territory occupied by ISIS?
It's not just that I'm taking risks. I think I'm going to my death. The journey through Syria should take 10 days, and each day I shall be near death. But what else can I do?
Aid agencies in Jordan estimate that in the last month or so, around 2,000 refugees have made the hazardous journey home. The agencies concede refugees in Jordan need more help to prevent them going back, but say that needs more money and support from the international community.
Reporting from Jordan, that was the BBC's Andrew Hoskin. The leafy Connecticut town of Fairfield has been home to one of the titans of the Dow, General Electric. But now the state of Connecticut is in a high-stakes game of will they or won't they with GE. The company said earlier this year it's considering a new home for its headquarters. GE says it objects to higher business taxes in Connecticut. A final decision is expected by the end of the year. So if GE does decide to pull up stakes, what will be left behind? From WNPR in Connecticut, Harriet Jones reports.
What's attractive about this is the first floor master.
Yes.
It's so rare. On the other hand, 4 bedrooms. So
Realtor John Engel is showing a home in New Canaan. This community is home to GE CEO Jeff Immelt. The town prides itself on its quaint village atmosphere and on wearing its considerable wealth discreetly. Realtor Engel says the prospect of GE leaving, taking with it well-compensated headquarters workers, is pretty scary.
800 more homes coming on the market throughout the county is going to have a significant impact on the housing market in these towns.
And in addition to all those hard-to-sell multi-million-dollar homes, the region will lose the millions of dollars in taxable income earned by those seasoned, experienced workers.
It's going to be a real shame if this jolt to the housing market, to the local economy occurs, and we have to address how to replace those jobs, replace those kids in the school system, replace those empty tables at our restaurants.
And in New Canaan's picturesque downtown, one of those restaurants is a local favorite for GE executives, Chef Luis, owned by Luis Lopez.
Now that they leave, probably other companies will be leaving too, and that means there is no money that is going to be expand. Employees lose their jobs, local people, so that means they don't go out. And so it will hurt the business. Of course it will hurt our business.
Fairfield County, just a short commute from Manhattan, has long had a concentration of corporate headquarters and wealthy hedge funds, but it's been struggling to find its feet since the financial crash.
To put it bluntly, it's a seismic event if one of these organizations leaves.
David Lewis's company, Operations Inc., provides HR services to small businesses in Fairfield County, many of them tied to business relationships with big corporations. GE says it spends $14 billion a year with Connecticut suppliers. Not all of that would leave with the headquarters, but Lewis is worried.
For, what it sort of sends in terms of a message about whether or not this county is still a viable place to do business, that I think is one of the biggest concerns.
So there are business relationships, there's housing, and there's all that disposable income. But there's also community involvement. At a warehouse in Stamford, a forklift moves pallets of donated medical supplies. This is AmeriCares, a national non-profit where the GE Foundation has spent millions of dollars funding programs since the 1980s.
They're very hands-on, and I mean that in the most positive way.
AmeriCare's CEO, Michael Nineheis.
And the fact that we are close enough to have regular face-to-face meetings no doubt helps.
AmeriCares expects its relationship with GE to survive any headquarters move, but that won't be likely for other charitable activity here. Last year, GE gave some $10 million in charitable contributions in Connecticut, and its workers, who sit on hundreds of boards throughout the state, gave 49,000 volunteer hours.
People put down roots. The companies don't. Not any longer.
That's Chris Bruhl, the CEO of the Business Council of Fairfield County. He's taking the long view.
The idea of departure to find the right headquarters for your line of business doesn't mean that the people left behind in Fairfield County are going to be a smoking ruin, right? So we will simply move on and adapt.
Those who may be left behind will have to hope he's right. In Fairfield, I'm Harriet Jones for Marketplace.
Coming up.
And then at some point in time, they listened to Grandpa's open reel tapes or cassettes, and they thought, wow, that's what music sounds like.
Yep, believe it or not, there's a company making a killing selling audio cassettes. But first, let's do the numbers. Numbers are mixed, but just barely. The Dow Jones Industrial Average rose 27 points, a 0.1% to close at 17,758. The Nasdaq lost 12 points, 0.2% to finish at 5083, and the S&P 500 added 3 points, a 0.1% to end at 2081. Apple sliced down 3% after a report suggested slowing orders for component parts. Those parts make the iPhone 6. Microsoft gave back 1 2/10%. Cisco declined 0.7%. We told you about the Department of Justice lawsuit to block United from taking over Delta's slots at Newark Airport. United Continental lost